Have you ever wondered why some students just seem to, well, chill all day? You know the ones, they're hanging out with friends, they're getting a full night's sleep, they never seem to panic, and yet they somehow end up at the very top of the class. Meanwhile, you've got others who are completely burning out, literally reading their textbooks line by line all day and still barely scraping by. Okay, let's dive into this, because today, in this explainer, we're going to reveal the exact hidden frameworks that those top students use to cut their study time in half while completely doubling their results. To start fixing the problem, we really need to ask ourselves a pretty honest question. Which of the 4 study paths are you currently on? You see, when it comes to hitting those goals, students generally fall into one of 4 categories. First up, there's low effort, low reward. These are the folks who kind of just party all year and then try to scrape by or end up failing right before the exam. Second, you have high effort, low reward. These students are always busy, always stressed out, sitting in front of books for hours on end, but they're focusing on the wrong things. Third is high effort, high reward. Think of your highly disciplined top students who study 5 to 6 hours a day. They get great grades, sure, but honestly, their lives are absolutely exhausting. And finally, there's the smart path. Low effort, high reward. So our main goal here is figuring out how to stop burning out and actually get ourselves onto that 4th path. Let's look at a modern-day tale of 2 cities that brilliantly illustrates this choice. Let's take Sneha, for example. She perfectly represents that high-effort, low-reward path. She's putting in 5 to 6 hours of self-study every single day. I mean, she's constantly holding a book, but she has absolutely zero strategy. And the result? Total exhaustion, constant panic, and a pretty disappointing 78% score on her exams. But then you have Ria. Ria is on the smart path. She studies for maybe 3 to 4 highly task-oriented hours a day. She still goes for evening walks, she sticks to her routines, she gets a full 8 hours of sleep, and she absolutely destroys the exams with a 95% score. Now, the difference here isn't that Ria is some sort of born genius. No, it's entirely about her strategy. So, how exactly do we transition into Ria's highly effective framework? Well, here is our roadmap for today. First, the 80-20 syllabus strategy. Second, triple-layered reading. Third, micronotes and active recall. Fourth, beating distractions. And finally, number 5, the 24-hour reset. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the 80-20 syllabus strategy, or how to find your golden 20%. This is the foundational secret Ria uses to dominate her syllabus. What we're talking about here is the Pareto principle. Think about it. In life, there's usually a massive imbalance between effort and results. Just like how you probably wear 20% of your clothes about 80% of the time, or how you hang out with 20% of your friends 80% of the time, well, roughly 80% of your final exam paper is actually derived from just 20% of your textbook's information. Ria understands this perfectly. Sneha, on the other hand, treats every single chapter as if it's equally important. And honestly, that's a massive trap that just leads straight to burnout. So the obvious question is, how do you actually find this golden 20%? Well, first things first, you absolutely must avoid the trap of opening your textbook and reading linearly from chapter 1, page 1. Just don't do it. Instead, you want to target the heavy weightage chapters first. If there are, say, 12 science chapters, but only 3 of them consistently yield 5-mark long questions, you tackle those 3 first. And to pinpoint exactly what to study, you really need to analyze at least 5 years of previous year questions, or PYQs. Let's say you're studying history. Instead of blindly memorizing 500 random dates like Sneha might do, look for recurring themes. You'll probably notice exams almost always ask about the core causes of the 1857 revolt or the impacts of major movements. Once you lock those core repeating topics down first, you instantly eliminate like 80% of your exam anxiety. Moving on to section 2, triple-layered active reading. This is exactly how you absorb that golden 20% without totally zoning out. Look, skipping straight into deep reading is a huge mistake. If you do that, you're just going to end up passively flipping pages for hours, right? Instead, you got to use a triple-layered method. Step 1 is simply to skim. Just flip through the pages, look at the headings, the subheadings, maybe check out the diagrams. Don't read the details yet. You are literally just building a mental map of what the chapter is even about. Then, step 2, scan. Go back through those same pages, but this time look for bold text, keywords, and highlighted terms. Your brain is going to naturally start linking these concepts together. And finally, step 3, focus. Now that your brain is actually primed, you do a deep dive, but only into that core 20% we identified earlier. Because your brain isn't encountering the material completely blind anymore, your focus goes straight to where it's needed, and suddenly, even the hardest topics actually stick. Let's talk about section 3, micronotes and active recall.
Because it's one thing to understand a concept, but it's another thing entirely to actually remember it when the clock is ticking.
Okay, the absolute most crucial point here is this. Stop copying the textbook. Seriously, Sneha's idea of note-taking was practically rewriting the book line by line. Ria, on the other hand, creates these minimalist, highly pointed micro-notes that are focused exclusively on those high-weightage topics we talked about. We're talking key definitions, really simple flowcharts, and basic arrow diagrams. And why is this so powerful? Because the day before the exam, when everyone else is in a sheer panic, frantically flipping through hundreds of dense pages, Ria can review her entire targeted syllabus in just 15 minutes.
And once those minimalist notes are made, Ria uses an absolute superpower technique called blurting. This is a form of active recall, and it's a game changer. Here's how it works. After you read something, you close the book and you try to explain the concept out loud in simple, everyday language. Literally act as if you were teaching it to someone else. Now, whenever you stumble or hesitate or fumble for a word, that is your brain's check engine light flashing. It's telling you exactly which concept is still weak. So you just open the book, reread that specific part, and try teaching it again. Trust me, 2 hours of this active learning is worth 1,000 times more than 8 hours of just passively reading words off a page, because it perfectly locks those concepts right into your long-term memory.
That brings us to section 4, beating distractions and doubt through the friction method. Because look, the best strategies in the world will completely fall apart if we don't address the smartphone sitting right next to your textbook. So let's look at the friction method in action. Imagine your phone is just sitting there on your desk. There is zero friction. The very second a topic gets even slightly hard to understand, your brain is going to take the easy route, grab the phone, and start scrolling. That was Sneha's exact downfall. But now imagine what Ria does. She intentionally creates physical friction. She places her phone on silent in a completely different room. What's on her desk? Just a water bottle, a pen, and her book. That's it. By making it physically harder to get up and reach her phone than it is to just keep reading, her brain actually gets too lazy to seek out the distraction. It's a genius way to trick your own brain into staying hyper-focused. But what about internal friction? What happens when you hit a concept that you just don't understand? Most students get completely stuck on it for hours. Their brain gets totally exhausted and they lose all their momentum. Instead of doing that, use Ria's foolproof 2-minute doubt protocol. Give yourself exactly 2 minutes to either do a quick YouTube search or ask a friend. If you still don't get it after those 2 minutes are up, just write it down on a piece of paper so you can ask your teacher tomorrow and immediately move on to the next topic. Zero time wasted, zero momentum lost. And to make sure all of this is actually working, you've got to implement a weekly reality check. Ask yourself, honestly, are you actually able to solve exam questions based on what you studied this week? If you did the reading and you did the blurting, but you still can't solve the past paper questions, well, it means your study method is failing somewhere and needs an immediate adjustment. But if you are solving them correctly, then you know you are perfectly on the right track. Finally, section 5, the 24-hour reset. This is a pro tip on using spaced repetition to lock all of this hard work into your brain permanently.
Now, what's really interesting and honestly a little bit terrifying is this massive number right here, 70%. A researcher named Dr. Herman Ebbinghaus discovered something called the forgetting curve, and it proves that human beings lose nearly 70% of new information within just 24 hours if it's not reviewed. I mean, your brain is literally designed to delete things it thinks are useless. So if you study a really heavy topic today and you don't look at it again until next week, you are basically starting from scratch. All that effort was completely wasted.
So how do we stop our brains from hitting the delete button? The answer is a schedule called spaced repetition. It goes like this. Whatever you study today, you absolutely must do a quick 10-minute review of it within the next 24 hours. Then you review it again 3 days later, then 7 days later, and finally 21 days later. When you hit these specific review intervals, you're basically tricking your brain. Your brain registers that, hey, this information keeps coming back up, so it must be vital. It then takes that data out of temporary storage and locks it permanently into your long-term memory vault.
Let's wrap this explainer up with an incredibly powerful philosophy to keep in mind. Study while studying and give zero attention to it while having fun. Seriously, it is time to drop the mindless heavy lifting. Adopt Ria's SMART frameworks. If you do this, I promise your grades are going to improve and you will finally